on the third episode of Louisiana FFA Alumni and Supporters, Where Are They Now? I had the chance to visit with Mr. Corey Broussard, a former state secretary of Louisiana FFA. We got to catch up on where he is now, what his FFA career was like, and what he hopes to see in the future. I'm Emerson Lyons, your state secretary, and today I'm joined with former Louisiana FFA state secretary, Mr. Corey Broussard. So, Mr. Broussard, could you tell us a little bit about where you are now, what you're doing, and what your career is like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as you said, I'm Corey Broussard. I was the state secretary in 2007, 2008. Originally from Grand Lake, Louisiana. Went to college at Louisiana State University and got a degree in chemical engineering. After getting that degree at LSU, I moved to Houston and started my career off in the oil and gas industry, working in something called controls and automation, which is a pretty interesting field, a little bit more technical and computer-based. Shortly after that, I got the opportunity to start working in life sciences and pharmaceuticals and got the opportunity to come up north. I moved to Boston, Massachusetts for a while, worked at some big companies like Takeda Pharmaceuticals, Bristol Myers Squibb, Celgene, and then I moved to Philadelphia and became the office leader for my department. So I'm currently living here, still working in pharmaceuticals. Just started a new position at a pharmaceutical manufacturer where I am the manager of manufacturing. We produce cancer drugs from actual cells that excrete proteins, and you refine that down and you use that for cancer treatment. So that's where I'm at.
Wow, that's amazing. So you've kind of been everywhere. You see a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Wow. So I know here in Louisiana, we've been affected by the virus for quite a while now. Competitions were canceled, schools were closed, and everything is kind of being rescheduled, and we're having to sit behind a screen and do most of our work. So can you tell us how maybe you've been affected by it?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely affected not only, day-to-day life, office life, work life, but just everything in general. So the economy, of course, took kind of a dip. Everyone started working from home. Luckily enough, my company and my group was set up to be able to work remotely pretty easily. A lot of what we do is on the computer and remoting in and doing work that way. So my office essentially went to working from home. Several hundred people to several thousand people eventually overstaged, went back to home and started working remotely. So I am in Philadelphia. It is one of the hot spots, at least we're near New York City earlier on. So things got locked down. Being in the house all the time, waking up and starting that process is a bit hard. But I think it is a interesting process that we're all going through, something that definitely is the first time in my lifetime and something that I think you guys are gonna, it's gonna change the way the future of not only education is going to be done, agriculture is definitely going to be impacted by that. Grocery stores are definitely having a higher demand, restaurants lower demand. And as we continue down this path and hopefully things get better, I think the way that we're working from home is going to stick. Virtual schooling, I think there's a lot of trial and error that we're going through, but I think it's overall going to be a really good thing and open up a lot of opportunity for students that don't necessarily live in cities in which you can go to school. Sometimes you have to drive 5 miles to get somewhere or more. I think a lot of that virtual environment is going to open up opportunities for students and people in general.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, this is like a new chapter that we're having to start, one that we've never discovered before. And there are going to be a couple of mistakes here and there, but I think we can perfect them.
Yeah.
So you talked about how you're in pharmaceuticals. Do you see yourself in the next 10 to 15 years staying where you're at?
Yes, I do. I always look back on my background of FFA and agriculture education. And I originally, whenever I went to LSU, was trying to go into agricultural engineering and be more in that life sciences and genetic engineering piece of it. I finally got the opportunity to get into there, and that's where I want to be. I really feel fulfilled doing that type of work. I kind of lean back on my roots of all of the trainings and speeches and organizations and workshops. And as I continue, moving up in my career, I always look back on that and be like, wow, I had a really great foundation teaching me how to communicate. And that's one of the things. I've only been working for 6 years, and I've been able to move up very fast. And I really attest that to FFA and all the leadership and and all the trainings I got whenever I was growing up.
Wow, yeah. So you kind of talked about a little bit about FFA in your career. Could you maybe go into detail about what it was like during your time as a Louisiana FFA member?
Yeah, if I can remember all that, it's been quite a while. I do remember just how great it was just being able to give the opportunity to students to be leaders in the organization. That was one thing that I loved about FFA, beyond any other organization that I was part of, is the ability that the students were the ones running the organization. And I know Kate can attest, and other state officers and alumni can attest that FFA is ran by the members. It's not ran by the ag teachers. It's not ran by the leadership. It's not ran by LSU or anybody else. It's done by the students, just like you're doing here now. You're the one running the interview. You're the ones that are going to put on all the workshops and all the camps and everything like that. That piece is the part that I enjoyed the most, and it was quite challenging. I will give you that. There were some late nights. I remember being constantly exhausted, but I think that really set the foundation for success in my life, is being able to know what's coming. I mean, especially when you get to college and having to do those late nights and memorizing speeches, it made memorizing, let's say, biology and facts and doing math and all that so much easier, because you're used to that, cram session stuff. So I really look back and think it's a great experience, and I encourage everybody to get into leadership in FFA. And if that's maybe not your thing, there's so many more career development events that are offered that can definitely sharpen your skills and build your toolbox.
Yeah, totally. You're so right about that. And you mentioned career development skills and events. What kind of, do you remember what events you may have competed in?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So I really enjoyed forestry. I still find myself, that was one of the first things I did whenever I was a junior FFA member. I think I was it seventh grade, eighth grade when it first starts. I got into forestry and identification. That was my favorite thing. I still find myself today looking at trees and spitting out Latin names and stuff like that, and people are looking at me. That one's definitely a fun one, just getting to go out in the woods. I showed sheep whenever I was growing up as well. Did that for quite a while. And then as I started, getting into high school, I really started moving towards the leadership activities. So doing public speaking, I really enjoyed just those type of events. I can't remember specifically which ones I was in or if I even won anything, but I do remember, just being part of the more, leadership side and building that kind of skill set.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. So looking back, what were some of the highlights of your FFA career?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember. Everything's kind of a blur now. I mean, I remember state convention that we ran. That was kind of a blur, but I remember how amazing it was and fast paced it was. But if I was going to back up through it, as secretary, you get the opportunity to go to Washington D.C. I remember that one. That was one of the first things I got to do, is fly to D.C. And me and Jacob Satig were there, and we were doing that, meeting all the people, being with national officers. I really remember that, and just actually we got to meet President Bush and being at the White House, and we got to meet with senators, and that was really a memorable experience. And then I think my favorite part about all of it is that summer, and it's unfortunate you guys have to do everything virtually, was the summer camps and running those and getting to meet all the members from all the different areas and building those relationships and those connections, and some of which I still have to this day. Every now and then you'll see on like Snapchat or Facebook, people pop up and you're like, wow, I haven't talked to them in a while. That was my favorite part, was putting on the camps in the summer. And then we had, the different events and going to different chapters and getting to present and give speeches. That was one of the things that I loved the most. I know my senior years, whenever I was a state officer, and I just remember always being away from school and going on events. And I remember teachers getting mad at me because I was always gone, but I made sure to get my work done. But just getting to meet people and talk with them and hear their stories and go to different schools, that was my favorite part.
What is your outlook on not only FFA as an organization, but the members within it and their role in the industry right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I'm a good example of not being one that stuck with agriculture coming out of FFA, but I can definitely look back and say that that foundation is definitely something that made me who I am. Um, the FFA as an organization is going to continue to grow. You know, everyone's got to eat. I know that's one of the big things, but I look back and I think about the technology and the skill sets that are required to mass produce, you know, agricultural products now. You know, it's not farmers anymore. It's large companies that are agriculturists, and they're the ones producing food. They're the ones that are doing that supply chain of getting it to the grocery stores, getting it to the restaurants. So, you know, you can go all the way from the beginning of, you know, testing soil to make sure that the pH and nutrients are correct. You know, that's part of agriculture. You look at, you know, wildlife preserves, or you look at oceanographers. I mean, there's so many different aspects that FFA touches on. Anything to do with the environment really kind of falls into it. So as the FFA continues to grow, I think it's going to broaden and not be, you know, that center view of, oh, that's farming. It's not just farming, it's agriculture. And people are starting to understand the importance of it. I mean, you look at this pandemic and you go to the grocery store and things are missing from the shelves, and you look at that breakdown and you're like, well, you know, what does it take to get food from the farm to the table? And I think people are really looking at that and understanding the importance of it. And I think a lot of that agriculture is going to start to become very important in the nation, and people are going to start focusing on it. And I think FFA is in the perfect position to start grooming individuals to be successful, not only in that aspect, but in, you know, just all aspects. And I think all members need to remember it's not just about, you know, one thing. It's about growing the skill set to be successful in life. And I look back and I think, you know, I'm not a farmer. I grew up on a farm. I look back at my roots. I have an agricultural background and I look at it, but, you know, I'm doing something completely different. And I want all students to remember that, you know, it's not just a farming organization. It's a leadership organization that is based on agriculture education.
So you kind of touched on how you want members to realize that it's not just an organization based on agriculture and having to be a farmer. So what would you tell those students coming into high school who are kind of uneasy or unsure about joining FFA and they don't know if they really want to become that involved into the ag industry?
Yeah, that is a hard one to sell. And I remember, you know, being in high school, president of my chapter, and then whenever I was a state officer, and even in the alumni, whenever I was an officer, you know, it's hard to convince students that, hey, this is the thing you should do, because, you know, people hear ag ed and they're like, oh, I don't want to do that. But you got to open up to all the other aspects of it. I mean, you know, I talked about forestry. You know, people don't think that's agriculture sometimes. They think it's something else. You know, you never know what type of thing will pique your interest. So I usually try to explain, you know, the different opportunities you have. And like I mentioned earlier, I started out, you know, doing showing and forestry, and then I eventually got into leadership skills. And as you continue to bring people in, I think members need to remember the conversation needs to be open to all opportunities that FFA gives, and all the different pieces it touches. And I can't even list them right now off the top of my head, but all the CVEs I think are really important to talk about, and you know, find what interests people. You know, some people don't want to be outside, you know, digging in the dirt, but some people, you know, like to dress up, put a tie on, you know, put on a blue jacket, look good, and go talk in front of people. Some people like the workshops or the, you know, team building events. There's all just so much that people can relate to, and I think the organization gives great opportunity for people. And as long as that is communicated, it's gonna continue to attract people.
Yeah, you are so right. So kind of to top things off and close here, what is one thing that you could tell FFA members now to give them hope for the future?
Oh, even harder of a question. I would say for FFA members, the organization is solid. It's continuing to grow. It has produced great people, great business people, great farmers and agriculturalists, great teachers, and that trajectory is something that everyone has the opportunity to do. So I believe that FFA is going to continue being a great organization. It's going to continue growing and becoming stronger, and it's going to change with time, but there's opportunity to be had. And as long as you take full advantage of all the opportunities that the organization gives you, you can be successful, and not just your personal life, not in your work life, just all aspects.